we're going to try this a little differently. Instead of having the slides on the screen for our introductions, we're going to wait to share the slides until we have done introductions. It's nice to be able to see people's faces. So encourage people to put their cameras on during introductions so we can put names and faces and places together. That's, I know, helpful to me, perhaps to others. This is, we're recycling an old intro from CCA 1.0 that was really fun. So, you know, so welcome to Cities Charging Ahead 2.0. This is our first cohort around charging, and this is our third meeting. And today, for introductions, what we'd like people to say is the name, your name and your city or organization, and then what city you were born in, and what city you now live in or call home now. So I will start. Caitlin, thank you for putting that in the chat in case you forget what it is, where you were born, what city you're born in, and what city you live in now. So my name is Diana McEwen. I am the Metro Search Director at the Great Plains Institute, and I was born in White Bear Lake. I'm even like represented with my sweatshirt, and I now call South Minneapolis home. And I'll call people as I see them on the screen just to make this easier. So Anders, you're up in the right left-hand corner, so why don't you go next? I'm pretty sure your city where you were born is not in the U.S.
Accurate. Hi everyone, my name is Anders Thulin. I am I'm responsible for e-mobility or transportation electrification for Siemens. And I've been doing that and wind power for Siemens for the past 10 or so years. I was born in Stockholm, Sweden, and lived there for a long time, and now I am in Uptown, Minneapolis.
Awesome, thanks. We'll do Caitlin, and then Rachel, you're on deck.
Hi, Caitlin Bachland with Great Plains Institute. I was born in Holmen, Wisconsin, which is just north of La Crosse, Wisconsin, which I now hear is one of the leading cities for COVID cases, so that's exciting. And I now live in St. Louis Park.
Thanks, Caitlin. And for those joining us, it'd be great if you could put your camera on while we do introductions. We are not sharing the slides so we can see each other's faces and while we do our introduction. So then Rachel and then Chris, you're on deck.
Hi, my name is Rachel Workin. I work for the city of Fridley. I am born and bred Houston, Texas. I firmly believe it's the best city in Texas. Austin is overrated and Dallas is the worst. If you have opinions about that, you can chat me.
Austin, Texas is the only other city I've ever lived in. Chris and then Leslie.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Acuna and I'm the Communities Program Associate with the Great Plains Institute. I was born in Robbinsdale, Minnesota, right outside Minneapolis, and I now live in Rochester, Minnesota.
All right, Leslie and then Jen Hassebrook.
Hi, I'm Leslie McKenzie. I was born in the Roseville, Shoreview area, and I've always lived within now 20 miles of where I was born. I'm currently in Marina and St. Croix.
Awesome. Jen and then Annie.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jen Hassebrook with the city of Eden Prairie. I was born in Worthington, Minnesota, in southwest Minnesota, and I live in Golden Valley now.
Awesome. Annie and then Melissa.
Everyone, I'm Annie Podorf. I work for the city of St. Louis Park, and I was born in Pleasanton, California, which is outside of San Francisco, and now I live in Minneapolis.
Good morning.
Hope your people are safe. Melissa, then Melissa.
Good morning, everyone. Melissa Bartman with the city of Red Wing. I was born in Red Wing, and I've lived here my entire life, still do.
Nice. All right, Lauren and then Brandy.
Hi everyone, Lauren Jensen. I am the Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Rochester. I was born in Austin, Minnesota, so Span Town, and I now live in Rochester, Minnesota.
Awesome. Brandy and then Emily.
Good morning. Brandy Toff with the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe and the Environmental Deputy Director here, and for lack of better words, the Sustainability Coordinator for the time being. And I was, sounds like the only Montana girl. I was born in Glasgow, Montana, a little podunk place there that my mom had to go like 2 hours to the nearest hospital for. And now I live in Bemidji, Minnesota.
Awesome. So Emily and then Drew.
Good morning, everybody. Emily Ziering with the City of St. Louis Park. I was born in New York City, in Manhattan, and I live in Minneapolis now.
All right, Drew, then John.
Hello, my name is Drew Ingolson. I work at the City of Minnetonka. I was born in Mankato, and now I live in Eden Prairie. And I just realized, Rachel, I already made an enemy because I'm not from Texas, but today I am wearing an Austin, Texas t-shirt. So, sorry, I already made an enemy. I do really like Austin, but I haven't been to Houston. I'll have to go check it out.
You have to go check it out. You will, yeah, Diana, same. Austin is like 2015, Houston is 2020.
I love it. Great.
I've actually been to Houston. Go Longhorns. John Howard and then David.
Hi, I'm John Howard. I work for the City of Winona as their Sustainability Coordinator. Born and raised in Edina, Minnesota, and now live in Winona.
Awesome. Dave and then Maria. And Maria, I think you can just chat if you don't have mic. You're on mute, Dave.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm Dave Wanberg. I'm the city planner of Faribault. I was born in Decorah, Iowa, but I grew up in Rochester, Minnesota, and now I live in Apple Valley.
That's quite a commute. All right, Maria, maybe did you chat? I'll just look. Yeah, Maria Freges, natural resources intern for the city of Shoreview. She was born in Shakopee and now lives in Elko, New Market. Interesting. And I don't think there's anybody else. And it seems to me that I have not mentioned, since we started this, and seeing Dave's face made me remember that for those that don't know, the first version of Cities Charging Ahead actually was nominated and won honorable mention for an award for sustainable communities, and Dave Wanberg was the one that nominated the project that we had first time around. So you're part of an award-winning project, just so you know, like just having that information. It's good to know. All right. So we're gonna do the slides, and our first speaker, and Anders, I just want to say that Anders is also, we've gotten to know Anders because he is a member of the Metro Steering Committee, and he has been very generous with his time, helping us with his expertise on electric vehicles, sharing information for another cohort with municipal utilities, and now with Cities Charging Ahead. We're really grateful to have him here and share his experience and knowledge. So I will let Anders take it over to talk about vendors and service. Thanks, Anders.
Super, thank you. And can you hear me okay? Good?
Yes. Yes, it's much
Excellent.
better, Anders, thanks.
Super, sure. Let's see, do I take over here and drive, or what's the story? Or do you want me to share my screen? How do you want to run this?
So yeah, you should have control now.
Got it. Okay. Hello again, everyone. I'm part of Siemens, have been for several years, and I'm now focused on charging infrastructure. The purpose of today is not for me to give you a presentation of Siemens. It is to help educate and provide information about what the implications are for charging infrastructure and what options are out there and considerations and sort of roadblocks towards successful deployments in cities, towns, municipal areas. Feel free to type in questions and we can get to them right afterwards, or if something comes up right away, feel free to jump in and cut me off. I'd be happy to sort of do that. Do we have how much time do I have? I think 15 minutes, is that right?
You know, you could go 20 if you needed to. We've got time.
Okay,
Do what you need to do.
I want to make sure we spend a lot of time on answering things that are keeping you guys up at night related to electrification. Me having all this information, I'm sort of on the other side of what your concerns are. I'm thinking, what's the problem? Let's do this thing. And I'm sure that's not the way you all are feeling, and I want to get you closer to that. So anything I can do to help answer any questions now or later in an email, my contact information, of course, is available. Please feel free to let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, for most of you, I'm really relatively close by, so it's more helpful for us to meet in person, COVID safe. I'm happy to sort of come out and point fingers at electric lines and try to figure things out together. First and foremost, in terms of just give you a snapshot of the market, I think you all already know this, otherwise you probably wouldn't be on this call. The market's evolving very quickly. Over the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of new models come to market, but that is a pittance compared to what's coming in the next 2 years. And that's not just level 2 type cars. It's also distribution vans, as you see Amazon with its Rivian vehicle. It's also pickup trucks now coming to market. It is school buses. It is long-term haulers. It is all these things. It is luxury cars and also more cost-effective cars. So those are all moving pretty quickly in the market, which obviously means that there's an uptick in terms of supply, which is good because that's been one of the challenges so far. Who's buying this electrification? It is very interesting to see that it's not just residential owners, right? It's cities, it's towns, commercial buildings are deploying EV infrastructure, multi-unit dwellings are deploying EV infrastructure, which is more complicated, parking garages, hospitals, you name it, airports. I'm currently working with 12 different airports on deploying EV infrastructure in their parking facilities for flyers when they fly. Schools, convention centers, you name it. So I think we've seen in just the last several years, we've seen over 100,000 charging points installed in the US, and we expect that to triple over the next 4 years. So to give you that sort of a brief snapshot of the market, of course, urban centers have a larger uptick than rural areas, but we do see a larger uptick of rural interest in these sorts of solutions, especially as the pickup truck market starts to take off. I need chargers is often the question I get. What should I do? And the real question is, well, what type of chargers do you need? What are the particular use cases that you're looking to address? And that's really what's going to drive what sort of infrastructure you select. So this page is just to give you sort of a snapshot of the type of applications that are out there, which really come into two different axes, if you want to call it that. One is, what's the size of the battery? And for private drivers and cars, you're almost always going to see a battery size that's less than 100, what's called kWh, which is basically the battery size or the amount of energy inside the battery. And that's the way that it's measured in kilowatt hours. And then the other question on the y-axis is, how long is the vehicle going to be where it's planned to be? And that's what's going to drive what kind of charging infrastructure you need to support that vehicle. So as an example, a private home is going to have a vehicle with a battery size probably substantially less than 100 kWh. It will also have a dwell time of probably around 6 to 8 hours as someone comes in the evening, parks the car, and doesn't take that car out again until the morning. Therefore, you're going to be in the lower left-hand quarter of this matrix, and that's where what's called a level 2 charger, which is a 240 volt charger, is going to be most relevant and address that particular need, because it can fill up a battery again in that 6 or 8 hour period. And then moving up into the right hand corner, probably less relevant for this conversation, would be, for instance, a transit bus that has a 5, 10, 30 minute turnaround time until it needs to be out on the road again. and it has a very large battery that needs to be filled quickly. Where to and we'll get more into especially level 2 charging in a moment. But
Hey, Anders.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Do it.
On the previous slide, I'm guessing others had this question as well, but I'm having a hard time like deciphering all of the acronyms within the chart.
Right, good
so
point.
if you could just cover that
so,
briefly.
Good catch, thank you. L2 stands for, in the lower left-hand corner, L2 stands for level 2 charging. AC is then, charging basically comes in AC or in DC current. And in AC, which is only level 2, everything else is DC. Level 2 charging with AC is just the industry name for the most common charger. When you buy an electric vehicle, you almost always get a level 1 charger, which is 120 volt. And that enables you to charge your vehicle in a very long time. To give you a specific context for that, a level 1 charger has an amperage, and what amperage is versus all of that, I think we can get into that another time. But suffice it to say that a typical level 2 charger has an amperage of 40, and a level 1 charger has an amperage of maximum 12. So in other words, you get, what is it, 3-4 times greater charging speed with a level 2 charger versus a level 1 charger. And a level 2 charger is really the industry standard. It is what it has an application both for residential, workplace type of settings where you have a dwell time for a private vehicle that is greater than just an hour. The other acronyms that you see on here, you see FC, which stands for fast charge, and in this case 50, which is 50 kW, 50 kilowatt power capacity, whereas a level 2 charger has anywhere between a 7 and a 10 or 11 kW capacity. And then you see HPC on here as well, which stands for high power charger, which is then a much faster charger, much more capital intensive in order to deploy. Okay, where to purchase? For your home, by and large, you're going to see charging infrastructure purchased online. I think something like 90% of all chargers purchased last year were purchased via just Amazon. And that's because most solution providers have those online, and also even if you're getting like a utility rebate or you're getting the utility involved, typically those utility programs will refer to an online solution from which to purchase, after which you submit to get a rebate with proof of purchase. You can also buy chargers via electrical contractors often. However, for the most part, when it comes to your home, the electrical contractor is going to be more there to ensure that there is 240 volts supplied to the garage and putting in any separate metering or anything like that that the customer needs. The charger is most often not purchased through that electrical contractor. For a building application, multi-unit dwelling, commercial building, high-rise, what have you, you can still buy chargers online, but most often in those building scenarios, you're going to need a little more sophistication, a little more nuanced accessories like pedestal mounts or cable management systems. And so then there are both government contracts through which to purchase. You can purchase through electrical contractors who will probably manage that on your behalf, talking to suppliers as an example. Or you can manage it through what's called EVSPs, or electric vehicle service providers, which are companies that are built specifically to help manage and walk through all the complexities of a particular unique project. For your business, it's going to be more quite similar to what you experience for your building. The only difference is if it's a large business, you might get an engineering and construction firm involved to sort of oversee or general contract manage a project. And then if you're operating a fleet, like a commercial fleet, a city fleet of lots of vehicles, then working together, you can also add the OEMs directly. So I work a lot with fleet operators and owners on figuring out what makes most sense, how to do things intelligently so you keep cost in control as much as possible, both from the capital side as well as from an operational expenditure side or cost of energy side. Relationships with vendors really come down to how much control does the owner operator want to have of their project. If you want a low amount of control, there are, again, companies, full turnkey solution providers that come and can even own and operate equipment on your behalf. So they can install charging infrastructure, they can manage that charging infrastructure, they can even just lease the land from you and own that, or own the infrastructure on that leased land and just have charging deployed for you. Concretely, Electrify America does this a lot with, for instance, Walmart will come and lease land at a Walmart facility and then deploy everything. Walmart looks good because they have the electrical infrastructure and charging at their site, and they can call it, you know, an EV-friendly site, and they can get those people to come to their buildings. But they have very little or any control over what actually happens at that particular land site. As you move sort of further towards the right, you can obviously have some degree of control if you have a partner that comes in and supplies and installs and operates and handles transactions for you and sends you a bill. But there you get to participate and be a selector of service providers and the like. And then if you have a high degree of control, then of course you can go and you can select bits and pieces. I want this charger supplier, I want this software provider, I want this installer because I always work with them. And that's another thing to keep in mind. For a lot of this, it looks more complicated than it is. If you work with an electrical contractor today, most likely they can do and establish the needs for this type of work. You don't need a charger certified installer. You just need someone who understands electrification. Rates and fees, forgive the sort of number of words on this page. There are a few things to keep in mind as you start to think about what the cost is and how you should structure your pricing if you're doing if you're charging drivers for electrification. One is, especially with fast charging, building a return on investment model is incredibly important. There are tools available to do an investment model and determine what your cost structure looks like. In fact, we had a presentation here in our last meeting, and Dan, I hope you can share that link for people in Minnesota to be able to see what does an ROI look like based on specific demand charges that exist in your particular territories, to really help potential deployers understand what their economics look like. And those are extremely valuable tools and should sort of be step one in conjunction with open, regular dialogue with your utilities. The other thing is to consider what is the actual value of deploying charging infrastructure at the site. If I'm deploying a super fast charger, my value is time. If I have a great spot, it is location. If it's easy to access, it's convenience. And those three things may drive differences in how you structure your pricing towards a user, meaning do I charge them per kilowatt hour or do I charge them per hour? Those are two factors that need to be kept in mind. And then I think what's perhaps the most important is to step back and look at, why are you doing this? Is it because you're trying to get more EV drivers in your service territory? Okay, why? You're trying to reduce emissions? Is it you're trying to get these people to go into this shop rather than your competitor's shop? Is it that you're trying to drive a certain identity of your city? Those things are far more important than how much money can I get from deploying a charger. So as a general rule, and this of course has lots of exceptions, as a general rule, what we've seen is that a public level 2 charger, just from an overall what's the objective here perspective, is almost always better when it's free for users to use, because you're trying to drive a behavior that's different than just trying to get money from that level 2 charger. And then for a public level 3 charger, which is that DC charger at a higher power, that has a pretty significant capital expenditure. And so it's quite rare that that's deployed for free. The cost buildup. So what are the costs that go into that? For any given project, you're talking about providing power to the site, installing the chargers, potentially constructing the cabling to go from a utility transformer to your charging infrastructure, and of course the charger and its accessories. On the operational expenditure side, you may have fees for billing customers, credit card fees or what have you. Cellular connection fees, if you're not using a wireless, a Wi-Fi connection to an Ethernet port or just standard Wi-Fi, you may have a need for a cellular gateway, and meaning you have a data plan and the like. And then you have sort of networking software fees that would be associated with seeing your full charger network, curtailing how much power is supplied, or basic management of those various charging points for a city manager to manage, or its suppliers to manage. That also comes with fees. And then, of course, if there are maintenance fees, especially as you get into the higher power charging activity, there are often maintenance fees associated with that. However, so I would say that when it comes to level 2 public charging, what we see is that the charger itself, just the charger, may be $1,000, let's say. But then when you add in the accessories, when you add in the cost of the power distribution, installation, construction, and the operational fees, you may be up at 8, 10x, or even 15x that overall charger cost at the end of the day. So some of these accessories that I was referring to keep in mind, and these are just various pictures to sort of demonstrate what we're talking about. In the upper left-hand corner, you could just have a charger on a pedestal. You could have that pedestal also have a cable management system to basically hold a cable off the ground. We're all in Minnesota. We know what that winter season looks like. You get a snow plow in here running over this cable, you could easily chop it up. So putting it on a cable management system in the wintertime is particularly useful. If you're in an airport or you have a lot of these chargers deployed, these little indicator lights up to show whether or not the charger is available have also been useful. And then of course you can combine all these items as well. Tesla down here has no authentication needed. For every other DC public charging activity, you need to basically have a credit card swipe or an RFID chipping code or a QR scan to then authorize a payment system. Sorry, Eric, you had something to say? Okay, if you got something, let me know. But Tesla doesn't have that. They basically have their own platform online where the vehicle is identified once it plugs into the charger, and then your account is debited based on that transaction. So there's no payment enablement or anything on a Tesla charger. You also have chargers that have either a screen, as you see with a charge point unit over on the right, or you have chargers with some sort of an sort of LED lighting structure where you can do certain things or send certain commands to the charger, as well as use RFID scanning. And then you have, as I said, on-unit screens. And then you have an important piece, which is that you have just a few suppliers in the market that have a large network of chargers across the country. One of them, of course, is Tesla, where only Tesla vehicles can charge. And then you also have, as an example, you have Electrify America, which is this picture in the lower right-hand corner. We have a different set of different charger vendors, but they all have to adhere to Electrify America standards. And then therefore you as a driver can become a member and charge up at these various points. I'm moving quickly here. It's just cognizant of time, but if you have any questions of any of this, please let me know. Software functionality and costs. I think this is maybe a bit too detailed. Long story short, no matter what, if you get a charger, you will most likely be able to get for free or close to free things like how much is it used? Can I get a firmware upgrade and get that firmware upgrade automatically deployed? But once you want to start doing things with the chargers from a software perspective, tracking the usage for your entire fleet, or billing customers, or providing what's called smart charging, or basically managing when power is allowed at certain limits, that's when you start to see some of these software networking fees. From a maintenance perspective, on a level 2 charger, what you should expect to see are usually 2 to 3 year warranties. Not a lot of maintenance required. It's going to be more expensive to try to fix one of these things than trying to just exchange it. So most likely you're going to see a lot of exchange, if anything, on these chargers. For public level 3 charging, excuse me, you also see a 2 to 3 year warranty, but that usually includes labor as well. And some light inspection may be needed on those. For heavier duty fleet charging applications, typically 2 year warranties only, all in, and some light inspections and maintenance as well. For all charging, the biggest headache you're going to run into that can be planned for and managed in advance is communication, or lack thereof. Being able to communicate with those chargers to make decisions, capitalize on incentives, and make sure that your grid isn't overloaded is by far the most important thing. If you're anyway doing construction work to deploy chargers from a power perspective, laying the infrastructure in place to allow for fluidity in communications is very important. So to summarize, number one, know your application. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you need in order to accomplish that? We can help you. Lots of players are out there to help you understand what sort of needs are. But of course, the first thing to understand is, what are you trying to accomplish at your site? The first conversation should be with your utility provider and your electrical contractors early on to sort of discuss this and theorize out what can be done theoretically, and then shake it out in economics. You can get a lot of help from your utilities by engaging with them early, and if you don't, you could be surprised by the lead times of getting some of the power to sites. Smart charging is, or sort of managing demand charges, especially on DC fast charging, usually does make or break a project economics. So really understanding what your utilization would look like from an energy perspective, and how that ties back to your energy bill, and what can be done with the utility in order to mitigate some of that, and also what can be done with the infrastructure and the software to mitigate some of that, are important factors in decision making. I would say don't get trapped by the easy button. The easy button's usually it usually has a sharp back end, meaning you're going to get tagged with a software fee you can't get out of, bricked chargers or something like that, or lack of control for scenarios in which you need control. So really understand what you're getting yourselves into if you're considering going with something that's all-encompassing. And really check for rebates and grants. They're out there, they're available. Right now, there's a federal grant for installation services that gives a tax credit up to, I think, $30,000. So there's a lot of cost coverage support out there in order to enable e-mobility. Finally, I think public charging, in my perspective, and also just sort of from a success in the market perspective, is a means to an end, not an end in and of itself. And to have that end reason in mind is always going to help make better decisions faster, more effectively for the city. I'll leave it there.
That was a lot of great information. Very dense.
Yes, sorry.
I'm assuming that, no, it's okay. I'm assuming some folks have some questions. You know, go ahead and chime in. We'll leave the slides up here because I'm guessing that as people have questions, you might need to move to slides to, you know,
Sure.
look at things again. So questions, folks.
is Emily with St. Louis Park.
Can you speak up a tiny bit, Emily?
Yeah, thank you for the great presentation, Anders. My question is, we have a number of publicly available level 2 chargers right now, and I feel pretty strongly about keeping them free of charge to users, that is. However, our city council at some point is going to ask, what's the ROI and when should we flip the switch and start charging users a fee? Is there a simple calculator out there to help me figure out exactly what that sweet spot is?
It's a good question. I think, Diana, the presentation that we saw last time would be a good tool for that, I think. So I think if you can share that with the teams on the phone, that'd be very helpful. I think that ROI tool was, and it does show not just for DC fast charging, it's a focus on DC fast charging because the economics usually comes down to demand charges. And you're not really going to see, Emily, you're not really going to see a significant impact of demand charges with level 2 charging, even if you have several at a site. It's more when you get up into like a 50 kW, 100 kW type of power peak that you're going to see that, that spike. However, what I would recommend is that that you're getting data from those chargers, that they are smart chargers, so you can actually collect the usage information so that then you can start to do some of the economics. There are, of course, easy thumb in the wind if you have analysis for how many vehicles are charging at any given time. But even then, it depends on the vehicle. They may not be able to take the full capacity of that level 2 charger. So you're actually not using it fully. So if you've got the data, either from the meter, from your utility, or directly from the charger software, then using that data, combining it with, of course, your utility rate. I'm here in Minneapolis. My standard rate is 10 cents per kilowatt hour. I assume it's probably somewhere around there. You can do some quick numbers to see how much it's costing you. And then if you want to bring that to me or a supplier of some kind, we can then say to enable billing, it would take this much effort to do that and it would cost this much. And then you can do sort of an economics on, okay, it's not worth it because we're going to make $3 a month and that's just not worth my time.
Yeah, so far I've tried to do a lot of those calculations myself, but you know, once you figure out, okay, well, I have a charge point charger this type and I have all the data, but I don't even remember what charge point said they charge me to allow for billing anyway. So thank you. I missed the calculator in the last presentation. So Diana, if you can fill me in.
Excuse me. Sorry. I took myself off mute and I started coughing. So just to be clear, I believe that was from a presentation for a different cohort with relation to municipal utilities. So it was a slightly different audience. And I believe that you were talking about the DC fast charging calculator. So look at, that must be Caitlin. And so, you know, it might have less applicability to some of the cities, but and maybe I'll just shut up and let Caitlin, since she's playing with it, say something.
Yeah, so this is a tool that GPI developed specifically for, you know, calculating economics around DC fast charging stations. So I'm not entirely sure like how applicable it would be for level 2 stations. I would have to connect with my colleague Dane and see if it also applies to level 2 or if the calculations that are baked into this tool are specific to DC fast charging stations.
Yeah, I remember him saying you could use it for level 2 charging. I see what you're doing here, and I think it warrants a conversation because I think that'd be helpful for folks who are trying to use level 2 charging at scale, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but this calculator, it's available on our website. We can send around the blog post that, you know, kind of talks more about the calculator and the economics behind it. But it allows you to, you know, play with these different variables, and then you can see in real time what that.
Oh, there you have it. You just created a level 2 charger if you bring it up to 7 or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
see how far you can go. Oh, go less. Yeah, exactly. There you got it.
And I think that part of the reason that he did this is that the demand charges obviously are much greater when it comes to the huge draw for a DC fast charger versus a level 2. And for the most part, most cities are not looking at doing DC fast charging. It's a very expensive project. It's probably not necessary in your community unless you're on a highway and you're trying to get people to come off that highway and charge up and spend some money at your local diner or retail shopping. So that it might be applicable to to some communities, some cities, but for the most part, I think most cities are looking at level 2 charging. But I love that we were able to figure out how to use this, and I just put in the chat the link to the blog that was published about a month ago, so folks can take a look at that. We're just trying to whatever we can do to help provide tools to help you make decisions about that. But the demand charge is a huge thing, and I love, Anders, that you talked about one of the first conversations you should have is with your utility. Do they have incentives, rebates? We know Xcel Energy has a number of programs and pilots, and some of the cities are working with them. We've heard a little bit about that. But no matter who your utility is, talk to them, because even if they don't right now have an EV charging program, et cetera, to work with you, hearing you ask them might create the demand and encourage them to do that, to go there. So really, really good idea to talk to your utility early on.
And I would just emphasize, I agree. By and large, DC fast charging is a very costly item. People get super excited about it, and then you start talking numbers, and it becomes a scary proposition. Justifiably so, and it can have a huge impact, especially on a small grid, if you have a muni, for example. So I think, if you've got, Emily as an example, I imagine you've got most parking spots in St. Louis, you got handicap parking, and then you have electric vehicle parking right next to, or on the next line behind it from a typical building. You do that at scale, and it will still attract people. You don't necessarily need DC fast charging to draw people in to use facilities.
Great. I know you guys have other questions. So, thank you also for showing kind of some of the bells and whistles. We spent some time in the project we work with the Cummins project. We talked about it a little bit last week with Shoreview and White Bear Lake. And, one of the interesting things is, all the bells and whistles cost more money, right? It's like anything. But, the screens that perhaps, local retail would buy an ad on, and put that there. There are communication devices where you can have a reminder sent to somebody, like your charging is full now, or it's, if you have a 2-hour limit or something, different cities, different chargers have different kind of ways to, mechanisms to, get people turned over so it's available to other drivers. That a text message goes to them like, in 15 minutes, you'll be at your 2 hours, and you need to move your car, or your fee will go up. I think we heard one had a 2-hour limit, and then after that it was $6 an hour or something. So it's there's some pretty cool things. Again, they all cost a little bit more money, but we know from some examples, Edina in their 50th in France parking ramp, they had some abusers that would sit there for quite a while, even though that it was a 2-hour limit and they were supposed to move. They had to start doing some different things and tracking who was parking there pretty frequently. So there's lots of options, and I love what you said, Anders. I do this with every single project, every event, everything. What is your goal? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And I do think it early on, having it free. If you spend money to put this charger in, and then it's so expensive, there's a hookup fee and a bunch of fees per hour, and nobody uses it, what's the point? And so really being thoughtful about that. And there are a number of cities that bought the smart charger so that they could charge in the future, but in the beginning, have it free so people could come and you literally get yourself on the map with PlugShare, et cetera. And so really thinking through, what is your goal? What are you trying to do? If your goal is to make money, this is probably not what you're going to invest your money in.
Yeah, don't do it.
That is not. That's not what I would do. I would go back in time and invest in Zoom, and that's how you would make your money. But that is just not. So really be thoughtful about your goal with your team and your city. What are you trying to do? And if it's related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, just to be forward thinking about what's coming down the line. This is not a fad. They're coming, it's happening, they're here, and we're seeing more, as he showed. So I really love that too, that you really talked about what are your goals. Really understand your goals and what you're trying to do.
And I like Emily's approach to this. Making it free first, and then figure out what's happening to your electric bill, and then determining whether or not you want to add a fee capability to it later. And for the most part, if you're making smart decisions up front, you can have something be dumb and then make it smart later, and take advantage of those additional capabilities and functionalities. So I think that's the exact right approach.
Other questions? And well, so if nobody does, I have another one. I hadn't heard, you talked about rebate grants federally, 30,000. Can you restate that, and who and what is that for, and who's offering it? Yeah, so there is a federal government tax credit that you would get as so if I've installed level 2 charging in my garage, and I've gotten a separate meter, and I've gotten a separate service to take advantage of Excel's program, as an example, that will cost maybe $2,000. So it's a pretty capital intensive thing for a homeowner, plus a charger. So now I'm talking about $2,500. So what the installation services there, around $2,000, can be covered, up to a third of the value of that project can be covered by a federal tax credit. That federal tax credit has to be applied for as you submit your taxes at the end of the year, either as a business or as a resident. And then you can get exactly the alternative fuel and infrastructure tax credit. Thank you, Caitlin. And you can get some of that money. And I think it was, $30,000 cap for installation services. Again, up to, I think, a third of the total value. And you might say, whoa, $30,000, it's never going to be that much, is it? It definitely can be. I've seen installation projects for relatively cost-effective charging that's costed over $100,000. So question though, does this apply to cities or just homeowners? Because the question is that most cities, they don't qualify for tax credits. That's been the issue with, EVs, et cetera. And so this is something maybe they could promote to their residents, but residents apply? And also businesses can do this as well. Okay. Yeah. But not the city. I don't know how that works from a tax credit perspective, to be honest. I think you're right, but I don't know. They don't have a tax appetite, so they generally don't qualify for tax. I mean, that was one of the big challenges with getting EVs. There was a $7,500 tax credit, but cities couldn't take advantage of it, so it made it really challenging and sad for a lot of cities that they couldn't take advantage of that. But we'll include these links that we've been putting in the chat in our follow-up email, so you guys will have that. But it's a nice thing to, if one of your goals for your city is you're putting in a charger because you want to, support electric vehicle, electrification of transportation in your community, and you're encouraging residents to do this or businesses to do this, that might be something that you can promote. Again, it's through the end of the year, so we still have a couple of months, that you support by, putting out there, sharing our blog with a little something on social media or on your website or in a newsletter. If you have a sustainability, kind of corner of your newsletter or something, that's something that you could share. I would also say there's so much emphasis and focus on public charging because everyone sees it. But the majority of charging does and should take place in people's homes.
assuming they have a single home and they can control all the inputs and aspects associated with that. So if I were in your shoes, I would make sure I'm also engaging with home builders in your cities, sitting down with them, talking about what do we need to do as a city to ensure that you're promoting not necessarily charging because the people don't have an electric car, but at least EV readiness in people's homes, making sure you have 240 to the garage, making sure there is an ability to get Ethernet or some sort of connectivity in the garage. Or if they don't have a garage, they're out somewhere, making sure that there's access to power supply in those areas. I think that's a huge potential and low-hanging fruit that I don't think we as an industry are really capitalizing on yet.
Absolutely, absolutely, that is a thing, and it's a barrier, or I would say a perceived barrier that, you know, the range anxiety, there's not enough charging out there. There is a lot, and there is more, and it's growing, and you know, to really for people to understand that most charging happens overnight at home. I've had my current EV for over 15 months or so, and I think when I went to Duluth, I used the Siemens charger in Two Harbors and one in Duluth. In the cities, I never really need it. If I find one, or if I'm out somewhere, I will plug in because I want to have them used because I want people to see the demand. But I just really don't need it. So yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Others, I feel like I've been talking too much. I know you have questions.
I'll ask a question. This is Caitlin.
Okay.
So, you know, Anders, you presented kind of a brand neutral presentation, which is obviously what we wanted. But it might be helpful to also talk just a little bit about what Siemens offers regarding like charging stations and, you know, how you could work with cities just to provide that information for them.
Yeah, I'd be happy to send around sort of a simple data sheet that shows one particular charger. If you flip back, Caitlin, to the picture of the bells and whistles. Yeah, so yeah, that one, yep. So what you see here in the sort of middle to the left of the charge point unit, that is a new Siemens Level 2 charger. Yeah, exactly. It's got a lot of different things depending on what you particularly need. So you can have it in a residential property, plug-in charger, or you can have it hardwired in a commercial context. You can also have a cellular SIM card inside that unit. And then you can have a lot of other chargers that connect to that unit via Wi-Fi. So you only have one cellular point, sort of cut down on data costs. So what we're doing there is deploying that charger starting now in the market and making sure that it has a ton of different, you remember how I said the biggest challenge is communication, making sure it has a lot of different communications capabilities, because we really do see that the most important thing to do when it comes to deploying chargers is making sure that they are smart and functional in that way. I personally, having a charger in my garage, by doing smart charging and programming when I charge, I save 75% of what my bill would have been by just doing things more intelligently. And cities can have those savings as well by making smart decisions. And more than anything, I think, you know, to Emily's question, making sure that you have data collection and understanding for what the utilization looks like and how you maybe want to adjust your charger deployment strategy in the cities, having that data is incredibly important. And you can only do that through smart charging. Much larger and probably not as relevant for this, but if you guys are traveling in the Twin Cities and you're taking the Sea Line as an example, it has some New Flyer buses, New Flyer manufacturers now in Minnesota, and in support of Metro Transit. Metro Transit is an industry leader when it comes to electrification. And they have several 450 kWh battery buses going up and down that Sea Line, which is very exciting, from Brooklyn Center Transit Center down through the cities. And Siemens Infrastructure is applying charging infrastructure at their Haywood facilities here in Minneapolis in order to charge those vehicles. So we sort of tinker on both sides of that spectrum. And we work with a lot of installers, contractors, and can work with your contractors, electric contractors, to help them figure out what makes most sense for your site applications. Even if you don't choose to go with us, which is fine. Our competitors are not ChargePoint and Tesla. Our competitors are gas stations.
Good point. Yeah, thank you for that. And we'll talk more about EV standards for development with regards to working with construction, private development in your communities. Probably in January, we're going to talk all about electric vehicle standards and how, I mean, probably the biggest tool as a city you have to increase, drivability for electric vehicles in your community is your ability to encourage or incent or mandate that development has, lays down conduit, has a certain percentage of spaces in parking lots or parking ramps that have the conduit laid and or have charging stations installed, especially multifamily. And so we'll talk more about that, but that's a really good point in, thinking about all of that. Any other questions from folks?
I have a question. This is John.
Hey, John.
When working or when selecting a contractor, does they need to have specialized skills for installing the chargers, either electrician or construction? Is that something that a kind of a standard company can do, or do you need to get I'm worried being in Winona, we're kind of outstated if we'd have anyone who has much experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I think I'm not an engineer by training, but I can certainly install a level 2 charger in my garage, no problem. When it comes to running wires and running 240, you do need to be a certified electrician from a coding perspective, and then of course get that inspected after the work's been completed. But that does not necessitate a Siemens or a ChargePoint or a Tesla certified electrician. That is the best way, really, I think, is to capitalize on whatever electric contractor you're familiar with, who is a competent service provider in your territory, so that if something does go pear-shaped or you want to expand or what have you, you can do it as cost effectively as possible, but take advantage of the local labor.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I mean, it's basic electricity, laying conduit in line, and it's not some super fancy special thing. It's laying conduit for electricity and understanding what is the electricity draw that they're going to need. And I would say that some utilities might have contractors that they've worked with or that they know have been installing them. If you feel comfortable, ask your utility if there are some preferred contractors or ones that they've worked with or seen, if you would feel better having somebody that is in that. I would say, though, there was a news article yesterday, maybe we'll post it or share with you. Unfortunately, the city of Litchfield recently put a charger in a MnDOT right-of-way on a highway, and that is not allowed. And it's a very sad kind of lesson learned of what not to do. We can send that out for folks. And it's heartbreaking to me to have seen a city, kind of try to do all the right things and put in a charger, and then now they're going to have to move it because it's in a MnDOT right-of-way on a highway, right near a highway. And
yeah, so that's a good point, John. I think so to answer your question, technically no, but from a compliance policy and ensuring that it's built in a way that it capitalizes on whatever incentives exist, and that you get those incentives as part of the deployment. Yeah, you may want to have someone with experience there, or at least has done the research in order to determine what needs to get done in order to do it correctly.
Okay.
But technically, no problem.
Right. Awesome. So I think we'll move on. Thank you so much, Anders. That was really helpful. And
my pleasure.
As usual, we'll include slides when we send out. We'll send out oh, that was a really cute picture. Go back to the picture of Anders with his child in the with the overhead bus charger.
Yeah, so that's the overhead bus charger at Brooklyn Center Transit Center. So that little pantograph comes down and connects with a bus as it pulls in and then charges very, very, very quickly. You wouldn't put this one in a garage in your house. This has about 100x the power that you would need in your house, and your utility would be very unhappy.
Right. And your electricity bill would be really high.
Yeah.
There would be some demand charge. Okay.
Yes.
Dang, it would be kind of cool to just pull in and have it charge overhead,
Right.
but
It would take about 5 seconds to charge your car.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to turn to, we always, want to have, so we did the question answer. We always are really looking forward to having cities share some of their experience. So now today where the focus is chargers. What kind of charger? Why did you choose it? What were your criteria? Kind of some of the things that we're thinking about. And so really happy to have Melissa Bartman from the City of Red Wing, which again, I think is one of the most unique kind of charger installs and partnerships. Share a little bit about the project in Red Wing. So Melissa?
Yes, thank you, Diana, and thanks for inviting me to share Red Wing's experience with our charging station. I did have a few slides. I don't know if you have those, otherwise I can just talk. Okay, so yeah, if you have that, we can pull that up. So next slide, please. Keep moving along. All right, so just to give you some context, Red Wing is a historical river town with a population, back one more, sorry. There we go, thank you. So it's just some context. Red Wing is a historical river town. We have a population with a little bit over 16,000. We installed and opened a DC fast charger in November of 2018, and it is located in a municipal parking lot. It's about a block off of Highway 61, and it is in a business district, so it's surrounded by retail, restaurants, and it's also within walking distance of quite a few parks. So our station is non-networked, and that's due to Red Wing opting not to charge users for the station. But one of the things that our city council was really interested in was knowing who was using the charger, if they were residents from Red Wing or if they were tourists. And so we were able to utilize a text message system that bike sharing program in Red Wing was utilizing. And how it works is there's a lockbox where there's the activation card, and then a user needs to text the zip code to the phone number provided on the station, and that software costs roughly $5 a month. And so in 2019, we had about 160 logins, and about 90% of the users were from out of town. Next slide. So initially, we were going to install a level 2 charging station, but then a hotel that was about a block away beat us to it. So then we started looking at DC fast chargers. But cost was a big barrier for us, so we did something slightly different. We are fortunate enough to have a local resident and engineer and also Sustainability Commission member, a gentleman named Bill Geen, who helped design a workable 25 kilowatt fast charger at a fraction of the cost of a 50 kilowatt fast charger. The warranty is for 2 years, and I should back up here. It's a Delta DC fast charger, dual wall box, 25 kilowatt. And the warranty is good for 2 years. And we have had some maintenance issues. Our charger was actually down for about 6 months this past spring. And so it resulted in us getting an entire unit under warranty this past April. So the total cost to install the project was right around $22,000. And a big part of getting this project off the ground was receiving a grant from CERTS. It really helped kickstart the project and get City Council's buy-in for us. And so there's a picture of Bill Geen. Yep, thank you. So user fees, we decided not to charge users for using the charger, primarily because this was used as a demonstration project. We wanted to raise awareness to EV charging, EV cars, and so our Sustainability Commission just really thought it was important that it was free. But our City Council was not comfortable providing free power to users. So we had to get creative. And so what we did is we with the Red Wing Area Chamber of Commerce, the Sustainability Commission, we partnered with them, and then we were able to approach businesses and ask them to sponsor the charger to pay for the electricity. So we had 12 of 14 businesses pay about $200 a year to I can't say that today, subsidize the DC fast charger. And then in return, they received a logo on the station. And then in regards to time limits, all of the parking stalls in that parking lot are 3-hour limits. And so that's the charging limit also. Next slide, please. And so some lessons learned. One, it's valuable to have both support and for us, it was valuable to have local support, local champions, and then also to get that grant investment to help us get the project up and running. We were fortunate that the Red Wing Area Chamber of Commerce was, the president was an EV owner, and that was really essential to part of our success. I think it's also worth noting that, in our downtown district, there's very little parking that's owned by businesses. And so really some of that responsibility we felt falls on the city to install a charging station. So, we could help people in the downtown area be able to charge instead of, with that limited capacity for parking with the businesses. I think the other thing is also to take advantage of opportunities when they come up. So having the grant opportunity was huge for us. It really, like I said, helped kickstart the project and get it up and going. So I think that's all I had.
Okay, thank you so much for that. A couple of questions.
Okay.
Caitlin put in the question, does each business pay $200 per year, which I think is what I saw on the slide, or is that the total sum?
I think it was $200 per year.
So that's about $2,400 a year. And I think I remember on a call a couple weeks ago that maybe you said that for 1 year of usage, it was about the electricity bill was $960. And just in addition to, so each business pays $200 a year, and that's to help cover the cost of the charging, correct?
Correct. Yep.
The electricity cost. And so then the bill goes to the chamber. The chamber pays the electricity bill with the $2,400 a month it gets from the businesses in the area, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And so they might even have now some extra money that's sitting there, waiting for electricity bills. And so can you say, so $22,000 cost, you got a $1,200 seed grant. So what was the city's kind of outlay for, of that $22,000, how much did the city chip in for the cost?
So that was the remainder minus the grant they chipped in.
Okay.
So, and we had to get somewhat creative there where the Sustainability Commission, they have allocated funds each year. Some of their funds went towards that, and then the rest was from City Council.
Okay. Other questions folks have? All right. Well, thank you so much. And I think Rachel is on, I just asked Rachel from Fridley to talk a little bit about the charger that they haven't quite installed it yet, but they're getting really close. But to just share, kind of what type of charging station are you going to have, network, non-network? How did you select the vendor? Kind of what were some of the important criteria? Maybe you could just come off mute and share a few things about the Fridley charger.
Sure, Diana. So we are in the process of installing our charger. We are waiting for the MPCA to approve our site plan, so hopefully yet this fall. We recently moved into our new Civic campus, and having an EV charger was one of the goals of that project. So at the time of construction, they included space for that on one of the electrical boxes, and then laid empty conduit from that box out to a vault in the parking lot. So right now there's the empty tubing, so when it comes time for installation, We just need to run the wiring through through that pipe tubing, and then pour the base for the pedestal for the charger, and get that installed, and we should be good to go. We applied for an MPCA Volkswagen settlement grant through GPI. So GPI submitted that application on our behalf. That, as along with some other cities, the charger is located in a parking lot in between our Public Works building and our City Hall. And then on the other side is a pond that's surrounded by a walking loop that connects into the regional trail core system. So we're anticipating this charger to be used by for it to be a pedestal dual port charger. One side would be available for a city vehicle. Our community development department is going to be purchasing the city's first EV in 2021. So they will use one side. And then the other side would be open to the public. So both employee and public use. So we needed a way to have like kind of cohorts and ability to charge to treat the public differently than the fleet vehicle. So we knew we needed a network charger. Then as part of the MPCA grant, there was like a sustainability or renewable energy component. So what we proposed is to modulate our charger, the wattage that it put out off of the solar panel production on the panels located next door. So I think this is something that GPI had done some research about earlier, with the idea being that as electric vehicle charging scales up, what the impact of that will be on the electric grid, especially during peak hours. And so if we can modulate the charging and the output that we're using from our charger from the grid off of what the solar panels are putting into the grid, they can cancel each other out and not impact, like during peak hours, the energy that's available. So we knew that in addition to being a dual port freestanding charger that had smart networking capabilities, that it had to have that ability to read the solar panels, or to incorporate the data from the solar panels next door. We typically buy off the state contract, and so I had reached out to the charge point vendor. However, the charge point system isn't able to modulate off of solar charging as easily as some other companies. So we had also talked with Zeph Energy, who had been a partner on the earlier study. And so we were looking at, we also knew we wanted cord management capabilities, and that's something that's being incorporated into their new model that's being released in October. So we've seen pictures of the charger. We haven't seen it in person, but it looks like it's hitting everything we are looking for. And then we did a price comparison of that with the charge point charger, both upfront as well as over the 10 years life expectancy of the charger. And they were really close. It was just a few $100 difference for between the two. So in our proposal, we're planning to go with Zeph, and we got a quote from the electrician that the city typically uses. However, that came in really, really high. So we asked Zeph to recommend an electrician, came in about a third of the price, and on their CV, they had installed a lot of other EV chargers as well. So we'll be going with them. And then per the MPCA contract, we need to have a 5-year warranty on that for parts and labor. It sounds like if there's an issue, it'll be resolved by swapping out the machine during that time. I had talked with some cities, some of them who are on the call, who about whether they were charging for the electricity, and I really appreciate their time. And yeah, it definitely sounds like the consensus is not to charge. That's something that we need to present as a policy to City Council. So our recommendation will be to have some amount of time of free charging, and then be able to charge after a certain number of hours as a way to incentivize people to get get off the chargers and move along. So we're anticipating the public who are using the chargers to be people who are parking and walking around the trails. Or there's a plaza right next to the parking spot as well where we host city events, so people who are attending city events. One question I had for the group, I know the cities I talked to, they weren't charging, but as we put together our proposal for council, if there are any other cities who are providing energy for free, if you could message me, that would be great. And also how, if you have a charger at your city hall, how you handle employee charging. We have a couple employees who are, who have electric vehicles, and wondering, trying to think through that. What we are thinking about proposing is that employees would be able to charge for a certain amount of time for free every day, but then after that would have to pay for the electricity. But wondering whether that would be considered a benefit for tax purposes, if other cities have worked through the interpretation of that, whether that's considered a taxable benefit or a fringe benefit, or a de minimis benefit. If you could let me know, that would be helpful. Yeah, so we're waiting for our site plan. Then we'll be receiving the charger, having it installed, and prior to that, we do need to restripe some of our parking spaces. Since the MPCA grant has an accessibility requirement, we need to put a parking, an accessibility aisle in there. Yeah, so that's where we're at with that, and happy to answer any questions.
That was great. Thank you so much. You covered all of the points. And folks can put in the chat regards, she asked me the question, and I think, it was appropriate to pose it here about charging. And I know that there's other cities on here who have had charging stations. I know I've used the one at Eden Prairie. They've had one for a really long time, in their city hall parking lot. And I don't know, if Jen want to chat if there's any restrictions against employees using that, or if there's a time turnover, but that, that's good. So I'm going to keep moving. Thank you for that, Rachel. And have just a few minutes here to talk a little bit more about discussion and questions for folks, especially if you haven't already put in a charger. I'm curious, have vendors reached out to you? You can either chat or go ahead and unmute yourself and say that. Let's scroll through a couple of questions and then give people a chance to chime in. So what types of charger stations have you seen in your area? We try really hard to, kind of show that there's, a lot of different options. I think, for a while, ChargePoint was the only, game in town, but that is not the case anymore. But I think if, there were a lot of early chargers put in by ChargePoint, so that's what a lot of cities see. But now we're seeing a Minnesota-grown company, Zeph. We've got Siemens. There are a number of other vendors out there. So curious and thinking about, I'm really curious about what are your top priorities as far as a charger or vendor? Is cost the most important thing? And for some cities, that is. Is it important that it's a local vendor, whether it's in your community or in Minnesota? You can, the maintenance contract, you can purchase your charger, you can lease it, there's maintenance contracts, the warranty, etc. So I'll just stop there for a second to see if there are folks that have answers, especially if you haven't already put in a charger. Kind of what are you thinking? Or if anybody has an answer to Rachel's question.
Diana, regarding your cost regarding the local vendor, one thing that did appeal to us about Zeph was resolving customer service issues. It seemed like they were very easy to get a hold of. I know a lot of people have had really positive experiences with ChargePoint, but it sounds like the rep that you use to install it, once it's installed, that is kind of the end of the line with that person, and then you're kind of off in their national working with their national network. And I don't know if that creates issues or not.
And I also, that was really interesting when you shared that, you asked them for a vendor, they gave you a vendor, and it was a third of the cost. That seems like a huge discrepancy.
Yeah, I think that the vendor that we typically use around our civic campus is just not their, that it's not their specialty. So maybe that's why it came back so high. But it was definitely much higher than we expected.
But it's sort of basic wiring. I mean, it's not like it's, I don't know. I'm not an engineer.
Yeah,
Nor do I play one on
yeah.
TV.
I think having the tubing already laid was a big win for us. So that's definitely something we would encourage we've been encouraging with all of the new projects within the city is lay the conduit now so you don't have to break any asphalt or cement.
All right. So I don't know if anybody wants to chime in. Well, again, we have a bunch of different questions to try to spur some discussion. So maybe the next slide, and I think Chris is going to add to the chat the questions. And curious again, we at GPI did install a ZEF charger that is a managed charging connected, in some ways with our solar system that we have on the building. And so this is a ongoing, question and interest for us as a clean energy organization. Really pairing that installation with renewable solar is an ideal, especially in an urban area. So curious if others are thinking about that. And, our colleague Brian Ross from GPI is our expert on that topic, but curious if others are thinking about that. Or any of the other questions, have you had some vendors reach out to you? Kind of what are your top priorities when you're thinking about this? Do you have any other questions still regarding vendors or charging station maintenance, etc.? So if I don't see other questions, Jen, do you want to hop in and just say a few things about the Eden Prairie? When you were one of the early cities, I think 2013, 14, I don't know, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago for the City Hall chargers. I think they installed them in 2013. In fact, I guess that vendor is no longer around anymore, so they're kind of historic remnants of charging past. Yeah, at this point, and I'm pretty new to the city, but they've started a plan to put out charging stations at different city facilities. We have a couple of charge points at the community center right now. They are smart chargers and they actually charge for usage on that. And I wasn't here to kind of understand what the thought process was behind that, but that's how that one's set up. And we also have in our CIP program for the next 10 years set aside money for installation of charging stations at our various city facilities for the next 10 years to add out to that fleet. For in-house chargers for our own fleet uses, we also use, I guess it's the residential charge point system for it. And, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of background about, why they went that route or, what they were thinking with the charging piece of it, or if they're planning on continuing yet. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, I know you've only been there for a few months, and they've been doing this for a while. And we'll have Eden Prairie back when we talk about fleets because they have one of the most interesting and exciting projects going on. Have the Ford 250s been delivered yet?
The trucks are here. I don't think they're fully upfitted yet. Yes.
Okay, great. So that's just a little tiny preview. When we get to the fleet cohort, we'll talk about the really cool project, and we're just finishing up a case study from Eden Prairie of some plug-in retrofitted plug-in hybrid Ford F-250s that the city is going to be using for plowing, et cetera. And so very interesting. I know that a lot of folks are waiting for the pickup trucks, and so using this ability to have it retrofitted for a plug-in is a really cool opportunity. Anyone else? Any other questions, comments that folks want to throw out there? Go ahead.
This is Mike from Hackensack. We're just little baby municipal thoughts here on EV installations or EV vehicles and the charging installations. But if you're saying the electric F-250s are available, that seems to me like a no-brainer for a small town like Hackensack to maybe entertain the thought of getting one of those to validate the need for the EV right off the bat. If 90% of the people, like in Red Wing, are coming in from out of town to use the chargers, it makes a little bit of a hard sell in a small town like ours with a low tax base. But
yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about when did you get those F-250s, and is it widely available?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of background info. I don't want to steal any thunder from any future presentations from Diana. They are regular Ford F-250s. They're actually retrofitted to add the charging piece to them once they're delivered. So it's not like you can go to a Ford dealer and buy a plug-in hybrid F-250 at this point. I think the thing that was attractive to us about it was, you know, a lot of times if you buy a brand new vehicle and you make those sorts of adjustments on it, it can mess with the warranty. And there's an agreement between this company and Ford that, you know, kind of upfitting these to make them plug-in hybrid capable, the warranty still stands, which was an important selling point for us. But yeah, I know our fleet manager is very excited about kind of the potential for using them in our fleets. And I know it's supposed to be happening any day, the actual like upfitting of the truck. So I would expect within the next month or so, hopefully that conversion will be done.
Can I ask who the upfitter might be?
Yes, I'm going to say Excel, but it's not like Excel Energy. It's a similar company with it. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can.
It's XL Fleets, right? Like the letters XL.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mike, we're just finishing a case study about it, and because it's, you don't just buy it off the lot and you pay for this additional, I wouldn't say it's cheap. It's quite an investment, and Eden Prairie just was super committed to doing this. So, you know, we're going to, as they, you know, finish it, we're going to get a picture and we're going to finish our case study. We have a case study about it. We'll make sure to get that out to folks. And it is really interesting, and it's great to see, you know, we need early adopters to do this, and, you know, demand and supply to help bring the cost down, and hopefully that will happen. But we know that the F-150 is coming out with an electric version in the next year. So, you know, we're going to see more and more of that. You know, those 250s were hybrid, and then again, they're having the charging so that they can be plug-in happen with this other company. And again, a big part of that was that warranty and not nullifying the warranty. So that was a big piece. So we'll get more information out that, and we'll talk about fleets in an upcoming cohort. So it's 11:32. I just want to flip the slides towards the end here. So just a reminder, next week we're going to be talking all about funding. So hope you can join us for that. A reminder, National Drive Electric Week is coming up, September 26th through the 4th. I'm going to be sending out some information to you all. If you have a EV on your fleet, we are encouraging people to participate in the social media campaign. Take a selfie of you and your vehicle, and use the hashtag. We've got some frames that we're going to be using on Facebook, but I'll get some more information out to folks, and really hope to see a lot of city fleet vehicles on the social media campaign. I think that's all we have. And, you know, folks, go ahead and get back to, you can email, Rachel was really looking to see if anybody has any EV station use at City Hall from employees. She's really interested in that. So Really want to thank you all for being here, and have a great Thursday. We'll see you next week. Thank you again to all of our speakers. I really appreciate that.